Will the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Wednesday, September 19th, 2018, please come to order? For the benefit of those who may not have participated in the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, our procedures are as follows. We will read the legal call of the meeting as published in the local newspapers. The applicant will be invited to come forward and present the case, explaining to the Commission and others present what is being requested of this property. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. There will be clarifying questions from the commissioners, then will be an opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. First, those who wish to support the application may come forward, and second, those who oppose the application will be invited to come forward and express their opinion. As this is a public hearing, it must be recorded. It is necessary for speakers to identify themselves, state their name and address before addressing the commission. The mic is not for any amplification, so if you can speak up, that's very helpful. It's just for the GCTV. The applicant is then free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearing and the regular meeting, at which time the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has the right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Office, 453-8039, after 9 a.m. Seated this evening are the following members: Sean Cosgrove, Richard Wallace. I'm Philip Johnson. This is Frank D'Andrea, Alan Brown, and Scott Edmond. Staff present are Aaron Mannix and Lisa Piombino, and our videographer this evening is Peter Schultze. The Secretary will now read the legal notice.
Notice is hereby given that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on September 19, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. in the Nathaniel B. Green Community Center, 32 Church Street, Guilford, Connecticut, in the Mononkatuk Room on the second floor for the following purposes. James Goodman, 86 Middle Road, map 60, lot 37, zone R3. Special permit to allow for the keeping of golden pheasants on his property. 3 Sachems LLC, 78 Sachems Head Road, map 21, lot 14-2, zone R5. Special permit for accessory structure over 750 square feet, 925 square foot garage. And the petition from Walter Corbiere to amend the zoning code has been withdrawn. Dated this 28th day of August 2018, Philip Johnson, Chairman.
Very good. Why don't we open up with Dennis and Kathleen Galorin. Please do.
Stand
or
sit?
Whatever your preference is.
Okay, I'm going to stand.
State your name and address.
Okay, for the record, my name is Pat Benjamin. I'm a professional engineer for the firm Bascom and Benjamin, located at 360B Main Street in Durham. And I'm here tonight with Kathleen and Dennis Galorin. They applied for a 3-lot re-subdivision on 12.5 acres on the south side of Race Hill Road into 3 lots. And I know they were here at the last meeting. I did read the minutes. I was actually at a hearing in East Hampton. So I just want to go through this real quick again. I know there was some leftover issues, but this is a copy of the MAPA survey. Here is Race Hill Road. Lot 1 is in the front. It's 4.11 acres. There's already an existing driveway which goes to the existing house, garage, and barn on Lot 2. And it is 3.71 acres, and lot 3 is 4.67 acres. And what we'd like to do is improve the driveway and bring it all the way up to this location, and then there'd be a single driveway that would go to lot 3. We did go through the Wetlands Commission, and we did make a couple minor changes to the outlet location for some of the infiltration drains along the proposed driveway. So I did add those to the drawing. I did resubmit those to the commission, so you have those now. As part of the application, when I first met with George, we know that we are required to provide open space as 10%. When you look at this property, this area is a field. This is wooded, and then around the house and in the back it's all wooded. there is an existing overhead power line which runs to the existing house. So we had thought the best area was actually where it's the highest point on the lot. There's an elevation change from Race Hill Road to the back of the property of probably about 60 feet. This is an area that has exposed ledge. It hasn't been treed recently, so we had proposed 10% for that area. I know there was a little bit of discussion that it doesn't meet the criteria of high-quality open space. It doesn't have any special wetlands. There aren't any special species trees in it. But we would provide a perpetual easement over it. In 100 years, it would have trees that are larger than what's there now. We did receive approval from your staff. I just want to go over the site plan.
Is it oriented north-south?
Yes, north is straight up.
Okay.
I can go over each of the lots if you'd like me to. I'm not sure how much Dennis went over at the last meeting. But briefly, this is a copy of the site development plan for lots 1 and 2. At 1 inch equals 40 feet. This is the existing driveway as it runs up to the existing house and garage. The first lot, lot 1, the driveway is going to branch off about 30 feet from Race Hill Road. It is going to be paved. You have a house location in the field, well in the front, a well in the rear, septic system in the front. The town engineer wanted me to pitch the driveway, and we have an infiltration drain with stone to grade, so it gets caught before it gets down here. And then he had me put a curtain drain around, actually the entire driveway. That goes into the existing drainage system on Race Hill Road. When we went to the Wetlands Commission, they were very concerned about erosion from the existing driveway going into the wetlands. There's a wetland area here, and there's a wetland area located here. So they had us pave the driveway up to this point. It's about 13 feet wide right now, so we're going to keep it at 13 feet. And on either side of the driveway is a 2 foot wide, 2 foot deep infiltration drain that's filled with stone, has a perforated pipe on the bottom. And one of their conditions of approval was to have one of them outlet in this location of the wetlands, and then as it got further down, another one outlets in the wetlands here. The ones that are down here actually get tied into the drain, which goes into
Does it slope north?
the property itself.
Yeah, does it slope
So
north?
right, so if you come into the property, this is uphill the entire way, and then as you get into here, it levels off. So it slopes. These grades are probably about 7 or 8%. As you get up here, it's relatively flat, 4%. The driveway itself, when you first enter, it's probably 4 or 5%, but when you get into here, it ends up being approximately 8%. And there was some erosion in here, and that's why they wanted us to pave it. So we agreed to do that. The rear lot, which is lot 3, that driveway branches off here. It sits by itself. Once again, the driveway goes to a house location. Well is in the rear, septic system is in the front. And this is that area of the open space easement on lot 3. And you can see that it's also shown on lot 2. This is the area of open space also on lot 2. Once again, we did go through health review. I know that the health department did approve it. Jim Portley originally looked at it, and we revised the plan for him and approved it, and we have been through the Wetlands Commission. So I'd be glad to answer any of your questions.
Two-sided.
Oh, yeah.
We had the big question about the open space or
Yes.
payment in lieu.
Yes.
Has that been resolved?
I spoke with Aaron. In the regulations, you are required to grant open space, that's 10%. It says in your regulations, like the other towns, there may be a requirement in lieu of. So we spoke with Aaron about it. If you don't want the open space, we can put a permanent deed restriction on the property that that area can't be cut down. And that's what Aaron had suggested to me.
So I included that in the memo to you with the draft resolution. I think, Phil, you have the one that has the back portion on it.
Okay, so do we need to read the whole thing in?
So what I had mentioned was, as the current subdivision regulations are written, they cannot require a fee in lieu of open space. It is an option. And as the applicant is choosing not to do that, and the town is not interested in maintaining that as open space or the land trust, you have the option of either waiving the requirement of an open space waiving the open space requirement or allowing the applicant to do that as meet the dedication as a deed restricted area of the property that would prevent future development. That's your two options that you can.
So we have the right as the zoning board to waive the right?
You have the option,
Okay.
you can waive the open space requirement for a subdivision.
And we don't mind the deed restriction. When we originally put the open space on, it actually separates an older subdivision that has denser zoning. The lots are closer together, the houses are closer together, so we just thought it acted as a decent buffer between the two subdivisions. These lots are much larger than what's over here right now. So a deed restriction isn't a problem for the owners.
Does the town have a recommendation?
I would prefer a fee and lieu,
A or
that was
B
our
is good.
recommendation.
The
That's
town's
that's not going
recommendation was
anywhere.
to get, that they would prefer a fee.
Right, but that, we can't require that, so
At this
our
point,
choice is
when
either
the
to
regulations are written, it just
waive the
may.
open space requirement or allow them to put a deed restriction on, or not put a deed restriction on.
So you have two conditions in your motion when you get to that point, that you can choose either of those, designated open space be waived or the conservation easement language.
All right, well, we'll certainly get to it in discussion, and then,
Got a letter.
oh, please read it.
This is dated yesterday, September 18th, 2018, from Dennis Johnson, Director of Health. On May 9th, 2018, soil tests were conducted on the applicant's proposed subdivision for the purpose of determining suitability for construction of on-site septic systems. The test results revealed moderately permeable soil with evidences of compacted substrata soil. Soil properties meet the basic design parameters and will permit the design and installation of septic systems for the proposed 3-lot subdivisions. Based on soil test and site plan review, it is recommended that the applicant's proposed subdivision be approved with the following conditions. Lots 1, 2, and 3 have septic systems design plans prepared by a licensed professional engineer.
Thank you. Is there anything else that we need to read in?
Kevin's was from last time, so I don't think we need to.
Okay. We want to make a motion to close? Or hold on, before we do that, any clarifying questions from the audience or commissioners? Would anybody like to speak in favor of the application? Would anyone like to speak against it? Would anyone like to make a motion to close?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item, James Goodman, 86 Middle Road, map 60, lot 37, zone R3. Special permit to allow for the keeping of golden pheasants on his property. This is the first public hearing.
I'm James Goodman, 86 Middle Road,
Okay.
and my daughter and I have these birds right now, and I would like to be able to keep them. They're golden pheasants, a little bit different than typical pheasants for hunting at the sporting clubs. Those are ringnecks. These birds weigh about 1.3 pounds each, so they're pretty much a pigeon with a long tail. Got a few different color mutations going on there. They're a docile bird, quiet. I've got 31 birds right now, and their total weight adds up to less than the weight of 6 average chickens, which directly correlates to the waste, smell. Aaron's witnessed how quiet they are. You know, all the birds together add up to less noise than 2 chickens.
Okay. As I understand.
Provide a little information. I did give you a memo. This application is in response to a notice of violation that was issued on July 25th for the keeping of poultry on a parcel with less than 1 acre of land. and for the construction of accessory structures without zoning approval in an R3 zone. At the time of inspection, there were 41 pheasants on the property, in a total of 5 structures, 3 geodesic domes of varying sizes, 1 hoop-style coop, and a smaller rectangular enclosure that has since been removed. Like I said, I believe the current number of birds to be 31 on the property. Section 273-242B of the zoning code considers number of animals per acre based on a unit of livestock. For purposes of this section, 50 heads of poultry are considered 1 unit of livestock. This section further defines that a minimum of 1 acre is required per unit. So for every acre of land, you are allowed 50 heads of poultry. Mr. Goodman's property is 1/3 of an acre, and so he does not fall under, he is not able to have any. So deviation from these standards are allowed by special permit by this commission. This deviation is the reason for this application before you today. The proposal was reviewed by the Agricultural Commission at its August 20th meeting, as stated in a memo from Kevin McGee. Dennis Johnson has also provided comments based on the Public Health Code. Just for your reminder, in granting a special permit, the commission shall consider public health, potential impact on the environment and/or surrounding properties, and responsible farming practices. The commission shall continue this public hearing for a minimum of 2 meetings, but you may waive the requirement of a continued public hearing by a vote of 3/4 of members with a finding that the application has been fully vetted with 1 public hearing. In considering the continuance of this public hearing, you shall consider the complexity of this proposed change, the interest of the public in the proposal, and the need for more information about this application.
Thank you.
Let's see, we have,
Dennis Johnson, Director of Health, addresses this subject. The applicant proposed special permit to allow of keeping of a colony of golden pheasants has been reviewed with regard to essential owner responsibility necessary to prevent development of public health nuisance conditions. Although golden pheasants are smaller than egg-laying chickens and require less food and maintenance, the keeping of the fowl must be conducted in a manner consistent with and applying with this Connecticut Public Health Code. Best practice management of chickens or wildfowl roosters facilities shall include: 1, regulated maintenance and cleaning of the variant and removal of waste, bedding material and spillage feed, a compost bin. 2, storage pheasant food and 55-gallon galvanized garbage cans with Titan fitting lids set up on bricks to keep the bottom from rusting, lined with plastic garbage bags and feed bags set inside to prevent condensation. It is recommended the application proposed special permit be approved with the following conditions. Number 1, the number of pheasants permitted in a variety and appropriate.
it's like a chicken coop.
What?
Or, it's called an aviary. It's just the name for a roosting house for fowl.
All right,
Just want to put it
so
on the record.
approximate for the size shall be that recommended in Guilford Agricultural Commission. Number 2, the cleanliness and operation of the pheasants aviary shall be conducted in accordance with the best practice management in keeping with the wildfowl aviaries and Connecticut Public Health Code 19-13-B1. So he approved it. He gives his approval, let's put it that way.
I came through and saw how,
You have that?
I have a copy of that, thank you. When he and Aaron came to my property, he saw how I store my food, how I compost the waste. Aaron again today saw the cleanliness of my aviaries.
I got the one from
I
the
think I'm doing good there. I put up some aviaries without getting approval for them. That's all on my shoulders. If I'm allowed to keep my birds, Erin and I have already got some preliminary plans, so I can revamp those, move some, lose some, reduce sizes, so that they would all meet zoning codes.
So what are the maximum number of birds that would be allowed on this property?
None right now, because
So
it's a
this-
minimum of 1 acre.
Right.
So you're allowed 50
This
heads.
is-
Right. This application is for a special permit to deviate from that requirement. The commission has the ability to grant a special permit to change those regulations.
I did a little preliminary reading on this today, and there was a section in the zoning code that talked about keeping up to 12, and I'm going to use hens, because that's what it specifically referred to, and if you wanted to do more than that, there was a special permit that would basically allow that. Is that what we're going for here?
Different sections. So hens and rabbits are treated differently than other poultry.
Okay.
So there is a separation between egg-laying chickens and poultry such as pheasants.
Thank you.
So, and I think the Ag Commission, their memo helps
Speaking
explain some of that.
Speaking of that memo, dated today, September 19th, from Peter Perkins, Chairman of the Guilford Ag Commission, and Kevin McGee, Environmental Planner, reason being special permit, James Goodman, 68 Middle Road, Guilford, Assessors Map 60, Lot 37. The Guilford Agricultural Commission, at its August 20th, 2018 meeting, reviewed the zoning enforcement officer's notice of violation and special permit application for 86 Middle Road concerning the keeping of poultry on a parcel with less than 1 acre of land. The notice of violation indicated that there were 41 pheasants on the property. The assessor's office notes that the property is .33 acres. James Goodman's letter attached to the application noted that the adult pheasants weigh 1.3 pounds, that he has 3 aviaries that contain 10 bird colonies, and a small pen for isolation. Food is stored in metal cans inside the house, and the waste is composted. The Agricultural Commission reviewed the agricultural regulations 273-243 concerning classification of the pheasants. The commissions confirmed that the pheasants are considered poultry and need to follow the 50 head per acre requirement. The Agricultural Commission refers favorably the special permit application with the following recommendations to put in special permit approval. 1, the pheasant number be based on the ratio of unit number and lot size, 16 pheasants. Male pheasants are okay since they do not make a lot of noise like chickens, roosters. Best management practices for the keeping of poultry be followed.
So the recommendation is to allow for 16. What's the lifespan of these pheasants? Do you know? I mean, you know, I don't.
Yeah, they can live even a bit over 10 years.
And okay, and how many do you have that are closer to the end of their life? I'm trying to figure out a way to allow you to keep them, but not replace them in such numbers, so we can kind of take care of
I have no intentions of replacing any. We had a couple of males. One of them broke his neck. He was previous to any of this, and so my daughters and my reaction were to try to hatch some of their eggs. They do a 10-egg clutch once a year per hen, and we were pretty good at it. We ended up with 24 chicks, but we raised them in our hands. One of the pictures shows some shoes that we had to put on one to try to straighten out their toes. They're pets to us. We have 6 birds that are adults, and they're probably 3 years old, maybe 4 years old. When I purchased those, and they were full-grown at that time, but that was about a year ago.
So the ratio now is 16, that's the maximum.
16 based on there being,
The recommendation of the agricultural,
With-
the Ag Society is make it the ratio of birds to acreage.
Exactly.
Right.
You have a third of an acre, you can have a third of what's
Right,
allowed
right.
per acre. That's their recommendation. I did do a site inspection today on the property. I took a few photos so you could see the current conditions of these pen areas. Some of them are hard to see through the wire, but the actual structures you can see, as well as the food is kept inside in metal containers. You can pass those around. I made copies and they didn't come out.
So I'm clear and everybody else is clear. In an R3 zone, if you have 1 acre of property, you're allowed 50 heads, which is 1 unit as of right. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep, the minimum is 1 acre.
But you got
So-
a variance so that you won't have to stick with the 1 acre plan, is that what it is?
You are able to grant a special permit to deviate from those
Or-
requirements of having 1
or it
acre.
could have gone to ZBA?
No, it's written in the regulations that
What's the end game with these?
that the Planning and Zoning Commission has the option of deviating those standards by special permit.
So basically, we would be granting a special permit with the proviso that the limit of the number of birds would be 16.
Well, that's.
Based
have
on-
that
basically
option.
the Ag
You
Commission
have that option.
recommendation.
You have to do that.
We don't have to.
I'd like to have 31 birds,
Yeah.
because I've got 31 pets.
So you said every year,
It would be really,
but you
be
said
a
every year
tearjerker to
they
go through
have
and
eggs?
say, keep it, excuse me?
You said every year they have eggs, right? And
Yeah.
1 year you got 20-something, so what's preventing that? So how does that 31 not go?
We incubated all of those, nothing
Okay.
hatched. in
Oh, no,
the nest.
okay.
So you're going to stick with your 31?
Excuse me?
You're going to stick right with
That's
the
what he
number
would
you
like.
Yeah, I have zero
So-
intentions that, our initial reaction was just wanting to be able to replace the bird that we lost to the broken neck. My daughter had taken to an FFA show.
So these
up there.
basically your pets?
Yeah,
They're not used for hunting or anything?
no, that's a ringneck pheasant, they're about 3 times as big. It's a different genus and species, they can't even interbreed. I did have some of those are included in that, coming down from the original number, and I had more before those. Those were a project for, part of her senior project at high school. She was in the ag program in Middletown.
So,
And those have all been culled.
would you object to, if we were to say you could keep your 31 birds, but as attrition takes place, that it would eventually become the 16?
That would be
Okay. I'm trying to get us to
extremely happy with that.
the area that,
Yeah, I'm not, no intentions of going into any kind of bird production or anything like that. We didn't even intend to have as many as we had. One of the things my daughter had picked up in school was that once a hen is separated from a rooster, her eggs are viable for 2 to 2.5 weeks. And I collected some eggs that were 4 to 4.5 weeks, put them in the incubator, told her that maybe we'll get 1 or 2, but probably nothing. And we got 9. It was a surprise, but...
for a while.
Huh?
Let's not use the incubator for the.
No, they're gone, and I'm done with that. There is an addiction to that. Anybody that's done it, I'm sure would confirm that, but, I have no intentions of hatching anymore. I just want to raise the ones that we have, we're attached to them. We had the ringnecks before, and one of my deals with my daughter on those was that they don't get names. Because,
Because they do.
just because
Things happen.
that was what we were calling to define between the pets, and this was her, we did this so she could know if she wants to pursue farming and in terms of the whole having to cull something, that was nothing. I did all of that, and I grew up hunting ringneck pheasants, and there was a lot of spending time with my dad component to the enjoyment of that. I was sick to my stomach by the time I was done with culling most of the birds. The show that we lost Red, our golden at, we took a ringneck to as well, and some hens, and we gave him a name. And we put him in one of the pens that's now gone, and another ringneck we chose that just, was one that wasn't beaten. They're pretty tough on each other. They need acres and acres each. But the Goldens they're good in the smaller captivity. They like the colonies. But, it's not a good idea to overload the colonies.
Okay. Any clarifying questions from commissioners? Are there any questions, and we'll have time for comments after, any questions from members of the public? Would anyone like to speak in favor of the application?
I don't, my name is Herb.
If you could come forward.
My name is Herb Burstein. I live at 98 Lakeside Drive. I'm a little confused. Questions from the public as opposed to a statement.
Correct. So so if there's any people that have questions with respect to the application, we can get the questions out and then we'll do comments after that.
I have a number of questions, and perhaps staff has answered some of them, but I would ask...
Can you come by the mic?
Come over here.
Because they're going to get you on the TV.
Peter's got to get you on TV.
Yeah. Perhaps staff has already answered some of them, or they're contained in written documents that we haven't, that the public has not had an opportunity to see at this point in time. Did staff explicitly consider the runoff possibilities associated with the site? That would be one question. Secondly, perhaps the application describes the nature of the enclosure, but from what we've heard, and it is difficult, at least for some of us, to hear when the speaker's back is to the audience. You get to hear, so that's good news. Does the P&Z know anything about the nature of the enclosure to be used at this point in time? How are they to be contained?
There are structures existing on the property
How
now?
would the pheasants be physically contained? I pose that as a question. You don't have to. I think it's something, I think it's something the P&Z might wish to consider. But I'll just pose these and be seated, and if they're not relevant at this point, I certainly am sorry. Implicitly, it appears that the pheasants are to be used as pets. That's what I think we heard, but it wasn't explicit in that regard, and that, of course, would make a major difference in terms of their intended use vis-a-vis the P&Z regulations. So that would be a question. I would leave that to you to determine that. I guess finally my question is, as I've listened through the past 15 minutes to your questioning of the applicant, you seem to be dealing with, if you pardon the expression, minutia. Should the number be 16? Should the number be 30? Do we have discretion? I hope this is still a question at this point, and I won't speak later. If one steps back and looks at the area that contains the so-called Lakes Association, that's the big picture. If you're at all familiar with the nature of the area, and whether it's a horse, and we have had a horse for a long time at one house, or pheasants, or rabbits, or pigs, or what have you, my question to the P and Z, and hopefully be considered, was are dealing with the minutia, if you will, are there, how many males make noise, females don't? I guess you know that. Does the P and Z step back and say, look, we have a lot of small houses here, they're close together, and we have the option of introducing a number of animals, however defined by the ordinance, or not? That would be a question. Do you step back? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I guess I'll answer that. We take all the applications at their face value and as seriously as we can. And I know some of the minutia can get tiring, but I think trying to get things right by all parties that are involved is really important to everybody up here. And, even if it's just about some golden pheasants, I think we take all of these items very seriously. So I don't know if that answers your question. Okay. So,
And to answer your question about whether he was going to have him as a pet or not,
Pardon me?
I asked him the question.
Yeah, it's rather difficult.
Yeah, so it's specific-
I asked him if he was going to, if these were just going to be pets, and he said yes for your answer for that.
So, and as I understand it, the structures that are there now are going to be altered and come into compliance per planning and zoning.
Everything will be in compliance at the end of this process. In terms of how the birds are contained, my structures are completely covered with chicken wire. I buried that a foot into the ground to prevent raccoons, and then ran rat wire around the bottom 1.5 feet so that raccoons or whatever, when I first put birds outside, I didn't have that, and a raccoon would reach in and grab the birds that were bedding against the chicken wire and bite their heads off. So, but I've never lost a bird. I've caught a couple.
Would anyone like to speak in favor of the application?
Just like to bring your attention.
Thank you.
The applicant has submitted, there are a few letters and that were in favor of this application, and the applicant's property is noted as the pink highlighted lot on the tax map, and these are, the properties with the red asterisks are the properties where these letters have come from.
And here's, all the letters basically say that they're in support of this, and I'll just read their names. It looks like Keith Mensch, 58 Middle Road. Suzanne, going to help me here. Can't read her signature.
Starts with a B, Hungarian.
Okay, it starts with a B, it's Hungarian. She lives at 75 Middle Road.
Yeah, they're right across the street.
Looks like Marissa McKay. She's at 80 Middle Road.
Yeah, she's my uphill property line and also borders at Flamont's property.
Got it. Michelle Anicelli at 14 Brookside Drive. And then, no one asked me to write this, and this is from Richard Gressley, 52 Milford Road in Guilford. All received by the Planning and Zoning Office on September 19th.
That's every house all around there.
Terrific.
They've been there witnessing when I've had ringnecks, what I have now. Richard, I put a letter together just so that someone would sign it.
No, it makes sense to me,
You know.
because you want to approach them and ask them if they support it, and if they do, we put their name to it, and if they don't.
If they had any questions or concerns or anything, Richard handwrote his letter, and that was before I had approached anybody about the idea of letters.
Terrific.
Went so far as to say that he thinks they enhance the neighborhood. You know, nice for that opinion, and,
Yeah.
he's a good person.
Oh, I'll just read a section. I've never been bothered by Mr. Goodman's pheasants. They are not noisy. They do not smell. In fact, they are difficult to even see from the road. Mr. Goodman has had to invite me across to his property to get a look at what I consider to be these beautiful birds. So, we thank you for his comments. Would anybody in the audience like to speak against the application? Yes, sir. Please come forward, state your name and address.
My name is Edward Lamont. I'm going to read a prepared statement, and I have one for each of you.
And can you state your address for the record?
25 Brookside Drive.
Is that you?
Let me put my glasses on.
I know, I did the same thing.
Yep, on Brookside.
The one that's
No,
closer?
I'm right here.
Okay, you're here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which one is he?
Budding, closest to budding, here.
This guy here.
Yeah.
Put him in blue.
Anyway, my name is Edward Flamand. I live at 25 Brookside Drive. My wife and I have lived for 41 years at 25 Brookside Drive. Our rear property line, identified by James Goodman as his northern line, is our backyard. Our rear kitchen, bath, and bedroom windows look out onto this property line. We are strongly opposed to the granting of a special permit to keep more than a handful of pheasants for several reasons. According to the zoning code for granting special permits, all special permits may be granted subject to appropriate conditions and safeguards. And then I skipped a little bit of space on the regulation, but necessary to conserve the public health, safety, and general welfare and property values in the neighborhood. Property values being the most important issue for us. Regarding the conditions for granting a permit, we are deeply concerned about this issue. For the last 10 years, we have been looking out of our windows at a blighted residence. 4 years ago, we contacted the town many times to request that the blight laws be enforced at 86 Middle Road. The blight at times has consisted of rotting boats, rusting trailers, construction debris, damaged accessory buildings, and also knowingly discharging gray water from his house onto our common property line, which has flowing water to a storm drain. This continued until the health department stopped it. It has often taken a long time for a response to requests for removal of blight, with ourselves and the town being very patient. With regards to property value, there are currently 3 freestanding bird aviaries, 4 additional detached accessory buildings, and a shed-type lean-to against the house, constructed of plastic tarps and miscellaneous framing, which appears to be used for storage. There are no other properties in the Guilford Lakes with the quantity of accessory buildings as 86 Middle Road. Even though these structures do not exceed lot coverage, the sheer number of buildings creates an unsightly mess and significantly lowers the resale value of surrounding homes, especially mine. Our second concern is public safety. During 9 to 12 months of the year, there is continual water flow through our backyards, coming off the hill behind us, along a common property line. It then proceeds through an empty lot into a storm drain, which empties directly into the Guilford Lakes. The proposed aviaries are only a few feet away from this continual water flow and would provide a direct route for nitrogen and other pollutants to reach the lakes. I have included a map outlining my property and the adjacent lots with the water flow marked in blue highlighter. As specified in the zoning code under wastes, no offensive or injurious waste shall be discharged or emitted into any river, stream, storm drain, lake or pond, or other body of water, or into the surface of any land as to endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare, or to decrease the value or enjoyment of other property. To summarize, our objections to the granting of this application for special permit: we live in a small community where many homes are on small lots, some as tiny as 1/10 of an acre. This special application on a lot of 1/3 of an acre with 7 accessory structures currently on site and a boat building facility occupying the first floor of the dwelling jeopardizes our property values, public health, and seems completely out of character for our small residential lakes community. The bird aviaries have existed now for over 2 years, maybe 3. We haven't kept track. And during the last couple of months, a third aviary was built along with some additional space for birds by a storage shed. We would not be here tonight if it wasn't for our objection and complaint to more blight, which brought the town once again into this issue. It is only now that our neighbor has felt the need to apply for a special permit. 86 Middle Road has not demonstrated good faith due to its disregard for neighbor property values, zoning regulations, and public health. Thank you.
Aaron, do you want to comment on the blight issue raised or not? I mean,
There have been, in the past, complaints, blight complaints on the property. I received a complaint regarding number of birds on the property, which is why Dennis Johnson and I went out initially to do an inspection. I was out on the site today, and according to the blight ordinance, the health department and the zoning enforcement officer are charged with enforcing that ordinance. I did an inspection on the property. Yes, there are a number of structures on the property. They comply with lot coverage. Some of these recent ones were not permitted. And the reason a permit has not been taken out at this point, it was waiting to determine the number of birds that were allowed, to determine how many coops were allowed to stay, and have a plan to issue a permit. There's no
is there a limit on the number of accessory structures that one, okay, just checking.
lot coverage
So
and
as
setbacks.
part of our- if we decided to grant a special permit, and if we took the Ag Society recommendation, could we also require that certain structures be taken down and only some remain to accommodate
If you were at 16 birds, and I have had this discussion with Jim on the property, if 16 birds are there, I would say the recommendation, if 10 were per house, or aviary, you would have 2 aviaries and then 1 separation area for, the infirmary. When you keep poultry, if one gets sick or injured, you have to separate them from the rest. And so he has a smaller area that is used as that. And that was what the recommendation of our environmental planner as well. So yes, some of those structures can be removed. Some of these structures are not related to the birds. There is let me look at the site plan here that Mr. Goodman. There's an old greenhouse on the property and an old shed in the rear. If you look here, this is a greenhouse along the property. This is Ed Clement's property. This is an old greenhouse. This is an old shed. These are 2 hoop tents that have been there for several years. Or it was my understanding.
Those are those garage tents.
I have some photos here I can show you of the conditions. Those are the coops. These are just general photos around the property. There is some type of drainage swale in the back of the property. This road here is a higher elevation, and there's some drainage that comes down the back. As I inspected today, there's some standing water and definitely low points on this adjacent property, which I would say are inland wetlands. There are no inland wetlands flagged on our database currently. I did not, although wetlands are classified by soil type, I did not see any obligate wetland species out in the back of the property. structures and obtaining permits retroactively for those would require an approval from the Inland Wetlands Commission, or at least a review by them to determine if they consider that within their jurisdiction. The majority, the latest coop that was proposed, that was built without a permit is this structure here, and then this secondary. These two have been on the property, and the two in the front have been here the longest. These are the more recent, and they do not comply with setbacks currently.
So they have to be.
So they would, at the very least, would have to get a permit and move them into compliance if they were going to remain. But at this point, there is no blight on the exterior of, on the site. Obviously, blight is on the site. Everything is contained. Mr. Goodman does have a home handicraft business in his house, which is an allowed use, an allowed accessory use according to the zoning regulations. Home handicraft industry is an occupation or art requiring skillful use of the hands in production of articles such as pottery, furniture repair, weaving, cooking, etc., where articles are not mass-produced. It's carried on in a dwelling occupied by a person or person directly involved in the production, and the production of which does not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, create undue traffic, or constitute a normal retail operation. The handicraft business, Mr. Goodman is a boat builder, and he builds 1 to 2 racing sculls a year. There are specific conditions for a home handcraft industry, which were raised by Mr. Flamand.
Pertinent to what we're deciding on the pheasants?
Not necessarily, but just to let you know as far as whether or not there's a violation on the property. I did an inspection. The handicraft business is limited to 25% of the floor area of the house, which would be 397 square feet of his house. The first floor living room is clearly a workshop with his 22-foot boat across it. Is not necessarily a conventional first floor.
Does it constitute more than 397 square feet?
No, it does not. So it is in compliance with the requirements of a handcraft business.
You're building a boat in the living room?
Dining room. You can't build a boat in a living room.
Could try.
Long enough.
I don't think I'll try that in my house. What is this?
That is those tent garages for compact cars.
For what?
Ted?
Yes,
Just
tarp.
tents?
Yeah, I got it
It's
at,
It's got a metal frame on the interior. and it
right,
goes
it's
on
got
top
a
of the
zipper
zipper shut.
shut tarp
What
on it.
I'm getting at is, what are you using that for?
The back one is storage, the front one is stuff that's on its way to a dumpster and storage, things like that. I don't have a garage or a basement,
Okay, thank you.
and I'd store stuff in my dining room, but there's a boat in the way.
Would anyone else like to speak for or against the application? Please come forward. State your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Charlotte Culvert at 195 Lakeside Drive, and I'm sort of reiterating what some of the other people have already said in that Guilford Lakes is a community, and it's different than maybe someone asking for a permit that just lives on a side street. And, it's such a community that we have get-togethers, we know everybody, we all walk, we talk. Unlike many communities, some people don't even know their neighbors. And, I feel very strongly that, it was developed in 1930 as a lake community, not an agricultural community. So that's my number one thought, and I feel that by letting someone have a variance for agriculture in that area where it's a lake community changes the whole atmosphere. And there's lots of agricultural areas in Guilford where I feel Mr. Goodman could rent some property if he wanted to keep his pheasants, and, and that would be perfectly fine with me. And I refer also to, and this really struck me today, was the Guilford Plan of Conservation and Development updated on July 15th, on 2015, that their goal was to create a sense of place in the neighborhoods, special places, and community character, and that the community character was preserved and enhanced. And I really feel that by having any type of agricultural area within our small community, it's going to change the whole character. And you sort of open the door and let other people have that too. And I would just hate to see this little gem of Guilford go away. Because if you've ever driven through that area, it's very special, and I believe dear to the heart of everyone that lives in the, I think it's 200 plus homes. Okay? Thank you very much.
As this is a special permit, it does require a second public hearing. My personal feeling is I'd kind of like to do a drive-by and do some more reading and research on this to make sure we make a correct decision. Any other commissioners?
I'm agreeing with you,
I
Phil.
think it deserves
I
a
do.
second.
I do. And I think the applicant should listen to the comments of your neighbors. I think that we have been here, I have not been as long a member as many others, but we have been at hearings where neighbors have heard the concerns of their neighbors, and they've learned something. And I hope you've learned something tonight.
Well, we have as many people for it as against it, so I think it's that definitely should go for another, to the next meeting.
Right.
And as far as the environmental that the fellow brought up out here, I find that difficult because the health department gave it a yes. So maybe we might want to have the health department take a look at that about the runoff. We don't want that in our ponds, so maybe we need to look at that.
Would anybody else like to speak? Briefly?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, I've lived there 41 years. He's the fourth person that's owned that house since I've lived there. And all along the back edge of my property and all along our common property, almost all year long, there is water running down through that boundary area. It crosses these two empty lots and goes into this storm drain. And I mean, this is the aside from the rain that we've had right now, this is the driest time of year. But in the beginning of spring and all through summer, there is just incredible amounts of water that run through there. And I think that's a serious issue because the soil type up in that area is very clayish. A lot of the soil comes down off the hill and runs down through all of our property.
Maybe we can get the Director of Health to specifically go take a peek at that, and if
He
you
does
would...
not have jurisdiction over wetlands.
Right, but
What
just-
Mr.
Okay.
Flamond is discussing are inland wetlands. That's what he's concerned with, impact on inland
Is
wetlands.
that the concern? But he would be overseeing the health issues, if any?
Sure.
And if he has additional comments, great, and if he doesn't, then he doesn't.
Okay.
So would someone like to make a motion to continue this to
October 3rd.
October 3rd?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you. Where are we?
3 Sages.
3, Sachem's LLC, 78 Sachem's Head Road, map 21, lot 14-2, zone R5, special permit for accessory structure over 750 square feet, 925 square foot detached garage. This is your first public hearing.
Sure. I can make more comments.
State your name
For the record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Harkin. I'm a professional engineer and principal of Harkin Engineering, located at 78 Wolf Hollow Lane in the town of Killingworth, Connecticut. Again, here tonight on behalf of my clients, 3 Sachem's LLC, for their property located at 78 Sachem's Head Road. The commission may remember I was here a couple months ago for a site plan modification for the house, the garage, the swimming pool that you see here. We did go through a CAM application as well. At the time that the commission did approve it, the garage was detached. It was 750 square feet. Upon construction, and the construction is underway on the main house, the client looked at the garage. He has a couple old cars that he wants to put in there, and the door swings and everything wouldn't work for him. So he asked to add 8 linear feet onto one side of the garage. By doing that, it increases the garage square footage to 932 square feet. So anything detached over 750 doesn't require a special permit through your commission. So we're here tonight for that special permit, basically to add 8 feet to that side, which equates to 932 square feet. I had the architect put together a rendering of the garage to show you basically exactly what it's going to look like with the car and everything. There's a little workshop in there now for gardening tools and things of that nature. So again, it's virtually in the same spot that it was. The only increase is on the lawn side, so there's no increase in disturbance. Obviously, with that 8 linear feet and the extra square footage, it does create a larger scale impervious area. The detention basin, or the underground storage system, I should say, that we designed previously is adequately large enough to handle that increase in impervious.
I'm assuming that we're not anywhere close to coverage limits?
That is absolutely correct. We're not close to coverage on this. And additionally, we're CAM exempt because the garage is actually 100 feet, more than 100 feet away from the wetlands.
Dennis Johnson weighed in.
Please tell us what Dennis thinks.
Dated yesterday, September 18th, subject 3 Sachem's LLC, 78 Sachem's Head Road, map 21, lot 14-2. The applicant's proposed accessory structure will not conflict with the location or function of the septic system currently designed for the dwelling.
Any other items that we need to be read in?
Just one thing, Mr. Chairman, that we did submit the certificate of mailings to the town hall, and we did take a picture of the sign that was posted, and we sent the picture in as well, so that's part of the record.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's always a question. I appreciate you answering it. Da-da-dum. Okay, that one's been read.
As you're aware, it requires 2 public hearings. You do have the option of waiving the requirement of a continued public hearing by the vote of 3/4 members, with the finding that this application has been fully vetted.
Okay.
With 1 public hearing.
So I will ask if commissioners have any clarifying questions? Are there any questions from the audience that need clarification? Would anybody like to speak in favor of the application? Would anyone like to speak against it?
Call for the 3/4.
Yeah, frankly, I'm comfortable with this at a 1 public hearing. There doesn't seem to be any objection. All the neighbors were noticed. It's very straightforward, very professionally done. Would someone like to make a motion to waive the 2nd public hearing?
So make a motion.
Second.
Call the vote. All in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yes, we should do that. Thanks for your points of order, Aaron. Would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Thank you. Next, Vigliotti Construction, Long Hill Estates. What?
Deliberation of public.
Okay, we have to do the deliberation of public hearing items first. Okay. So Dennis and Kathleen Galoran, 222 Race Hill Road.
That has a back on that memo? Yes, I think I passed that to you, Phil. The other one that was cut off.
The original has blue ink.
Right.
I know it's there.
That has the Kevin thing.
Papers. So, as Frank's, look, there we go. As Frank is looking for this, thank you, Frank. So why don't, do we need to read the whole thing or just the draft resolution as offered, Aaron?
What's that?
We need to read the whole thing or just the draft
You
resolution?
can do a draft resolution. Yeah, the public hearing is closed. That was a memo to the commission. So,
Okay.
yes, there is an option in here, whether or not your designated the designated open space be waived, or be it further voted that the language of the conservation easement.
Okay.
So that would be up for
So
discussion.
I'll read in the draft resolution as offered. Be it voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a re-subdivision of 3 lots for Dennis and Kathleen Galorin, 222 Race Hill Road, map 109, lot 35A, zone R8, as shown on the map entitled Property/Boundary Survey showing RE subdivision of Dennis and Kathleen Galorin, created lots 1, 2, and 3, number 222 Race Hill Road, Guilford, Connecticut, scale 1 inch to 50 feet, dated 17 May 2018, revised 7/8/18 by Bascom and Benjamin LLC, Durham. Further, it's voted that the designated open space be waived, or further it be voted that the language of the conservation easement shall be in accordance with the standard conservation easement document of the town of Guilford. The terms of conservation easement shall made a restrictive covenant running with the land, binding successors and assigns. If a conservation easement is not approved by town meeting, the applicant shall file a deed restriction with similar language. Conservation easement be filed in the town land records at the time of filing of the approved subdivision. No building permit shall be issued and no site work to be conducted until the conservation area has been properly marked with iron pins and signage at approximately 50-foot intervals and turning points. Be it further voted that the town of Guilford zoning enforcement officer should be notified to inspect the sediment and erosion control measures prior to site work. Soil stockpiles should be contained by silt fencing and/or hay bales. Soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. Be it further voted that this application is approved based on the finding that it conforms to all applicable sections of the zoning code and the subdivision regulations of the town of Guilford. Be it further voted that this re-subdivision shall be effective September 28th, 2018, and upon filing or recording of approved plan per section 8-25 of the Connecticut General Statutes.
To that Dennis Johnson's condition that lots 1, 2, and 3 shall have septic system design plans by a licensed professional engineer.
Please add that.
Second that.
Second, okay. Discussion?
I think we've got
I guess my thought is, do we really have to put the conservation easement on it? I mean, I can't imagine that they're going to be able to build on a rock outcropping. But, maybe there's accessory structures or whatever. But they seem to be fully willing to have the easement. I sense that the town does not want the property as open space. So I'd be fine with either the deed restriction or no deed restriction, depending on how you guys feel.
Okay without it.
What do you think? Remember, deed restrictions can only be enforced by abutting neighbors. The town does nothing about them.
Yeah.
So,
The way to do that, the town doesn't want the responsibility, right? I say put a deed restriction, say the deed restriction is required. I think that's reasonable.
okay.
I think it's reasonable even with the applicant.
Okay. The applicants seem to be fine with it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to,
What's the point of it?
Well, it would be in keeping with the spirit of the restriction in the first place, I guess, if you leave it that way. At least,
and I guess to be consistent.
Right. That's the only reason why it comes to mind is something that we would maintain in this case, just because keep it consistent.
Pre-stall anything coming before the board again, if someone wanted to do something else, right?
So,
And it frees the town from any responsibility for monitoring open space.
so we would proceed just with the deed restriction?
Yeah.
You good with that?
Sure.
Okay. Any more discussion? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, Three Sachems LLC, special permit for accessory structure over 750, this is the garage. Please do.
Be it voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approves a special permit application for 3 Sachems LLC, 78 Sachems Head Road, map 23, lot 14-2, to construct a 932 square foot detached one-story garage. Be it further voted that this application is approved based on the finding that it conforms to all applicable sections of the zoning code of the town of Guilford. Be it further voted that this special permit shall be effective on September 28th, 2018, and upon recording of certified copy in the land records of the town of Guilford.
Second.
Very good. Discussion? Straightforward.
Open and shut.
Good? Okay. Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I guess we could. Thank you. Go to subdivision, Vigliotti Construction, Long Hill Estates West, map 57, lot 205, zone R3, 4-lot subdivision.
Good evening. Chuck Mandel, agent for the applicant, Vigliotti Construction. We are proposing a 4-lot subdivision. Just for reference, this parcel is an 8-acre parcel. It's just north of Alpha Avenue. Let me get you a better picture there. There we go. We had wetlands approval, and we had extensive soil testing with the health department. We originally had proposed the houses to be moved further back from the the front setback line. Wetlands had several comments. Originally, we had 7 lots, and we ended up with 4 lots. This entire area is a hayfield that was mowed, but it was wetlands. So you and I may or may not know it was wetlands if we went on it. The soil science did determine that it was wetlands. They'll all have separate driveways. We're proposing
All from Long Hill Road?
well, the 3 will be off Long Hill Road, and there will be another driveway off of Alpha, and there's a section of Woodland Road, which is actually unimproved right now. Our original plan was to have this abandoned and give property rights to all the adjoiners and access it that way, but with Jim Portley and Janice came in, and Janice just suggested we just leave Woodland Road alone as a town road and just use it as a separate driveway. If it ever does become a town improved road, we'll just have a driveway coming off of Woodland. It's highly unlikely, but it's possible.
Those are your 4 lots.
These are in the gray, these are the 3 lots. The 4th lot's back here. There was, most of the houses on Alpha have already gone over the line, the property line, during the survey. So what we're going to do is quit claim section of our property, the 8 acres, to Alpha and increase the size of these lots, if they're willing to take it. Just to...
If they don't?
If they don't, we'll keep it. There's no harm. It's all wetlands. There's nothing can be done with it anyway. The other aspect, and I was very interested to hear your discussion about the open space, because originally during the staff meeting when we had, months ago, we had talked about open space. No one wants any open space. It's not contiguous to anything. It's just a maintenance headache for wetlands, for the Open Space Commission. So we were talking about fee in lieu of, so we decided to do a fee in lieu of. In your discussion now, all of a sudden I'm listening that it's not required to do the 10%. You could do fee in lieu of, which is not required to do the fee in lieu of. We could ask for a waiver. We did ask The client is willing to do the 10%. We had a 17,000, was it 17,000, Karen? Oh, it's
$17,681 is the fee in lieu.
I think I'll withdraw our offer of the 10% fee in lieu of, only because the commission brought it up, and all of a sudden now there's precedent that they don't want it anyway, that I'll withdraw that and ask that we waive, I'll write that out right now, waive the requirement for open space, and we do the same thing. We had a Conservation Commission, conservation restriction of this piece in here. This is the hatched line in here, and that would incorporate, it's almost 2 acres that we were going to dedicate to a conservation restriction. This is all upland in here, but to prevent any garages, structures, anything, that's all attached to this lot. And
I'm sorry, can you clarify, you're looking to now withdraw the,
Well,
your client has a signed agreement that he is willing to do
well,
a fee in lieu
I don't think it's,
of-
I think it's an unfair burden on my client. Why would, if I was able to waive it, which I was, and that's my fault.
It's not, no, the commission in these subdivision regulations has the ability to waive the open space requirement.
Correct.
They, as far as the property not meeting the criteria of what's desirable.
Correct.
They would clearly prefer a fee in lieu to use the dedicated money towards properties that are more desirable. And that was what was proposed in the beginning of this subdivision
absolutely
discussion.
correct.
And that's
Absolutely
what was agreed upon.
Well,
I have,
Would he have to reapply if he wanted to?
well,
We could just move forward with the 10%, right? We just, because the town hasn't said that they won't take it, right?
the town did say they will not take it.
correct.
George,
They have
I spoke to
not,
George.
And the applicant has agreed to pay a fee in lieu because the town was not, this is not contiguous with any other open space.
Well, and
And they
in
were-
fairness to us, that was the nuance of the regulations. I was unaware that we were able to ask for a waiver if the town didn't want the open space. We were perfectly willing to give the open space, and if we gave this as open space, we could do that right now, tonight, just change the plan and give this as open space, yet the town planner does not want this as open space. It's not contiguous.
Not the town planner.
Or the town.
The town,
Or town
or
staff.
the,
Town staff.
the Board of Selectmen, as far as adopting that, or the land trust, because it's not adjacent to any other parcels. The property on the east side is more
No
desirable
argument
as
at all.
open space, and that the commission would very much desire
And believe
to
me, I
have
was the
that.
last person in the world who wants to cloud this right now. But I just, due diligence to my client, I think it's unfair, since it was granted on the last application, public hearing, you were willing to waive it, and the spirit, as Mr. Edmund had said, the spirit of it was to give open space. And in that same,
The last application,
Apply a deed restriction?
correct,
No.
on this hatched area.
the last application, the open space was not desired by the town, and so that was placed as a deed restriction. It was not, the requirement of open space was not waived as,
Well, you
as,
can't waive it, but the commission.
the commission did not waive it.
We chose not to,
They
though.
chose an
Oh, at the last.
open space deed
Just
for the last
minutes
application that
ago.
was just on before you.
We chose not to waive it, we chose to require it as a deed restriction.
Okay, so I'm proposing the same, to require this is a deed
I don't know
restriction.
if that means that,
And I can write a letter right now asking to waive and to expedite things, to waive the open space requirement, give this as a conservation easement, and withdraw my 10%. I don't think it's fair to my applicant.
Well, I'm kind of the mindset that I want to have a conversation with town staff on this, so I'm thinking I would like to continue this to our next meeting. In all fairness, I'd really rather not shoot from the hip.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
understand that. But I think it's too big of an issue just to let this
I
drop.
agree, that's
mean,
fine, and again,
yeah.
we want to be fair by you, but we
Right, and
also
I'd
want
be
to,
doing my client a disservice.
we want to be respectful for the
Oh,
process as well.
absolutely. But I was led to believe by the town staff that no one, they did not want this as open space.
Well, we'll try and get some clarification.
Absolutely.
Would anyone like to make
Correct.
it?
It was clearly stated that the town would prefer fee in lieu, and the applicant agreed to that.
Right,
That's-
but Aaron,
that's
only because I
correct.
was led to believe those were the two options, either give open space or fee in lieu of.
You have a copy of the subdivision regulations, Chuck?
That's my fault. I told you, it's my mistake. I'll fall on the sword for this one, but I will delay it.
Would anyone like to make a motion to continue this to our next meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
I wish you didn't close it, I just had one.
It's not a public hearing.
Oh, I know.
Subdivision, it's just.
So you'll have an opportunity to chat at our next meeting.
No problem, okay,
Yeah, it's just tabled to October 3rd.
okay, thank you.
Feeling that can was gonna get opened up.
That's a slippery slope we've jumped down, isn't it?
I had a funny feeling that was gonna happen.
What?
Has nothing to do with us at all.
Yeah.
It really doesn't, but it does.
But then it does.
Speaking
All right.
of that, does.
Speaking of, site plan, Town of Guilford Park and Recreation Department, Bittner Park, map 97, lot 10, zone R5, site plan proposal for 18-hole disc golf course in a wooded area of the park. Thank you, sir.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good?
Good. So this is Lawrence Rooney, who's one of my, the Parks and Rec Commission members, and sorry we're flooding you with papers, but I want to kind of give you a lot of stuff that, go over some of that, but these are things you can look at afterwards. What we're handing out is, I gotta get my glasses so I can.
Thanks.
See that? We're handing out,
Can I just ask a quick preliminary question?
sure.
We approved the disc golf course on Peddlers. Why are we shifting from that approved plan to a new one?
Because it wasn't approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay? And the Board of Selectmen would prefer,
The issue at Peddlers was really the parking lot, because we were going to expand parking.
And take down trees.
Take down trees. The Board of Selectmen has authority over town parking lots. Parks and Rec Commission has authority over parks. But because of there's something in the charter that says Board of Selectmen have authority over parking lots, and there was some controversy about taking the trees down in the parking lot, that the project got shut down, basically. There's some other issues with the landfill, the former landfill there. There's some issues with that came up, and so that project got abandoned. Yeah. So-
Okay, that's enough.
thanks.
That's it.
Proceed. Killing lots of trees here.
Yeah. So what we're giving you is, one of them is the photo of the first fairway that we have already created, so people had an opportunity to see what it would look like. And on the back side of that, or maybe a page next to it, is what it looks like next to the fairway, just to show the difference. The fairway looks very nice and clean. The area next to it is full of, debris and downed trees and so on. There's another picture of what a typical tee box, tee pad would look like in a basket. So, just an idea of what we're talking about. We also have, looks like an Excel spreadsheet, I think, of the wetlands markings. We measured 54 places, any of the fairways that were adjacent to wetlands, and that's part of why the Wetlands Commission approved this last week, because they saw the diligence and time we put into that. Literally marking out from the wetlands markings, measured out the edge of any fairways that would be adjacent to any wetlands. And the distance is minimum 27 feet to 70 feet away, so we're well out of the wetlands area. There's also the Natural Diversity Database. Kevin McGee made an application in June because we wanted to just make sure there are no issues, environmental issues. That was in June. The response came back August 21st, and they had some recommendations. With that, I have a letter that I submitted today, asking them to relax those recommendations, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. I have Chuck Anicelli, who's a herpetologist, is here, and we can address that a little bit more. He can highlight that. There's a letter also from Joel Helander, who is an amateur herpetologist. He's felt very strongly there's no conflict with turtle population with what we're trying to do at Bittner Park. And I think that's it. So that's what we handed out. So just to let you know how we got to where we are right now, aside from the whole peddlers thing, we had a public information open house. We created that first fairway back on June 25th. I'm sorry, in June. June 25th, we had an opportunity for the public to come and see it, so you get an idea of what a fairway might look like. I think there were about 30 people showed up. 15 of those people were town, boards, commissions, so really from the public, probably 15, roughly. They had a chance to look at it, ask questions. Our designers were there. People had a chance to try it. We had 7-year-old kids trying it. We had Lawrence Rooney trying it. People in their 70s and all ages came and they just had a blast trying to throw that frisbee up, the disc up on the ridge. So we gave an opportunity for people to see it. Then on July 17th, the Parks and Rec Commission held a public info meeting. About 40 people showed up at that meeting. Not everybody spoke, but 10 spoke in favor, 3 to 5 against, and I think it was about 8 or 9 that were neutral. I say neutral, they more had questions about what's it going to cost, how far is it going to be from my property, people who live, adjacent to the park. So they weren't really against it, they just had questions. So people that were clearly against it were maybe 3 or 5 that spoke against it. We also did an online survey. We had 530 responses. We were tasked by the first selectman. He had said we didn't show a lot of community support for Peddler's Park.
Who did you survey? Who did you survey?
It was online. It was sent out online.
It was sent out?
Yeah. No, it was online. I'm trying to remember how people got it. It was, I don't know, through Facebook or, I don't know, it was an online survey. We had 530 responses from people all over the community, all age groups. We looked at the demographics of what ages were responding to that. 75% were supportive of a disc golf course at Bittner Park, 20% weren't, and 5 were neutral. And so, didn't care either way. So I think the bottom line is there's overwhelming support for this. So then we also had the Wetlands Walk on September 8th through the Wetlands Commission. The Wetlands Commission approved it last Wednesday night, right next door here. So the map, I'm sorry it's not bigger, so I don't know whether you can see it, but so orientation, Route 77 is here. This is the entrance to the park. Can you guys see okay? But there's the soccer field over here, the softball fields. Back parking lot, skate park. A lot of the fairways are up above the skate park and the soccer field in the woods up there. And then going north, this is Baldwin property over here. We're not going on the Baldwin school site at all. It's all in Bittner Park. And Bittner Park goes all the way up to Lone Hill Road here. Anything in blue are wetlands that I highlighted. So the area, the concentrated area, if you want to call it, spread out over probably, I'm going to guess 60, 80 acres, something like that. But it's mostly above the soccer field, skate park, and then going north toward Baldwin. And then the river's down here, the West River. We were careful to not cross any trails. That was some of the concerns people had at Peddlers. None of these cross trails, they do go, all these dotted lines are trails. There are a couple trails that we may relocate or close a couple spurs. For example, I think there's this, doesn't show on here, but there's a spur that goes here. But the main trail is right here anyway, so this spur just kind of goes around. People can still get from point A to point B. It's not like an important trail, I don't think. There might be one other one that we might move a little bit, but at the most, we might move or close a couple spurs. Again, this is all approved by the Parks and Rec Commission. It's under their jurisdiction, and they've approved this. The thing I also want to point out, these circles or blobs, there's no way to 100% specify where this disc golf course is going to go. I mean, it's not like a soccer field where we can tell you it's going to be 70 yards wide by, 300 feet, 320 feet long or whatever. There's no clear dimensions. And the reason for that, so for example, number 2 looks wide, looks like maybe it's 100 feet wide. There's no way it's going to be that wide. But I want to seek approval for the area because somewhere within that area this number 2 is going to go. We don't know until we get out to it because we are not going to take down any big trees. And so we might say that, hey, let's have it, from here to there, but there might be 5 big trees in the way, so now we're going to move it over 15 or 20 feet so we don't have to take those trees down. But typically, according to our designers, the way this works, you go in and you take some of the small stuff, scrubby brush stuff down, and then you say, okay, now let's take some of those 2-inch trees, and as you get a clear site plan, you get a better idea of which way you're going to go. I can tell you on this fairway number 1 that we created, it goes this way, even though it shows a, kind of going over to this direction. That was another proposal the designer had. We actually made it this way. It goes up on a ridge. Most of the trees that were taken down were 2-3 inch diameter. One was larger, it was about a 6-inch diameter, but it was dead. Other than that, what we cleared out of there is, if you look at the backside of one of those pictures, that's kind of what the area adjacent to what we cleared. So that's typically what it looked like. Just a lot of dead trees laying on the ground, and we cleared them out, and I think made the appearance much better, and made it, accessible to become a good fairway. Typically, the trails, the fairways are about 30 to 40 feet wide. Some could be a little bit wider, but 30 to 40 feet.
Can there be trees in the fairways, or do you have?
Yes.
There can.
Can be.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's not clear cut, and that's part of the challenge. The trees become obstacles, and that makes it a challenge. In fact, I think the picture I showed you, I don't know if you can see it, but there's the blue stake represents the tee box, and if you look, you can see a little red stake up on the ridge. That's where the basket would go. Excuse me. I think there are 3 trees right in front of that. Those trees all would stay there. The challenge is getting around those trees to get to the basket, and that's part of what makes it fun and challenging. And again, a disc golf course is not like a golf course. There's no grass planted, no mowing, no fertilizer, no herbicides, nothing. It's natural through the woods. It's a wide trail in the woods. That's all it is. With a tee box, tee pad, which is typically, I think I should give you a picture too, typically 5 feet by 10 or 6 by 12 roughly, 4 by 4s with stone dust in between. Some of them are concrete, some are rubber. We're not going concrete. The plan is to go with stone dust. The brush piles that we would cut down, and mostly we'll probably pile them along the edges of the fairway so they become habitat and also barriers. One of the issues which I'll have Chuck address more in a minute is there was some concern about eastern box turtles and wood turtles. That came back with the natural diversity database that they're a species of concern. They're not a protected species, not endangered, but they're a species of concern. And we initiated that study because we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to have any environmental issues with this project back in June when we first started it. And as I said, the answer came back in August. They had quite a list of restrictions. The restrictions we found out are geared more toward major construction projects, like heavy equipment, like bulldozers, and we're going to a chainsaws and clippers. We might go in with an ATV with a cart to just bring stone dust to some of the remote areas of the park, which we believe we'll get approval to do that. But the brush will be piled along the fairways to create a wildlife habitat. I wanted to mention that we have a lot of support in the community from businesses. 14 businesses have pledged support for this. The estimated cost to build this, well, let me step back. It's typically, disc golf courses are designed by, built by, and maintained by volunteers. That's how they are all over the state. There are 27 in the state. None on the shoreline. We'd be the first one. The closest is in Wallingford, and there's one in East Haddam, the newest one. But they're designed, built by, and maintained by volunteers. The cost is basically the stone dust, the baskets, and the signs. Like on a golf course, to be a sign saying this tee sponsored by, whoever, whatever business. 14 businesses donated. Rotary Club gave us $3,000. Guilford Foundation Youth Advisory Group gave $1,000. To date, we've raised $11,500 of the $12,000 this is going to cost. Very, very low cost. I can't think of no other recreational amenity that costs so little. If I want to put up just a swing set and a slide in the park, it's $8,000. This is an 18-hole disc golf course that we can provide for people in the community at almost no cost.
What about, will you address maintenance?
Low maintenance, almost nothing.
Okay.
Wallingford has one. I talked to my counterpart there. Theirs cost $9,000 to build 6 or 7 years ago. They haven't put a penny in it since. Wickham Park, which is the biggest one in the state, probably the most popular one up in Manchester, East Hartford border. Again, I talked to the park director there. He said once in a while they might ask for some wood chips, and he just brings wood chips. We're not doing anything with wood chips, so there's no maintenance. The volunteers do it. There's some branches that kind of get eye pokers, they just come in and clip them. So, and that's typically what happens. In some of these courses, The one in Norwalk, I think, has been around for 15 years or so. Wickham Park's been 8 or so, something like that. But I can't say there's never any maintenance, but very, very low maintenance. And the maintenance is done by volunteers. So the bottom line is that it's low cost to build, low maintenance. All age groups can play. I mean, we first tested this idea 2 years ago at the Guilford Lakes Golf Course. We had a 9-hole tournament. 80 people came. There were 7-year-old kids. There were senior citizens, families. And we, as we do more and more research into this and talk to other towns that have it, they say that on the average, about 30 to 50 people every day come and play. It's free. And so when some people had questioned this, one of the challenges is, well, what's this going to cost for taxes? 0. I mean, we raised the money. But by comparison, if we were to build a tennis court, $70,000, and only 4 people can play at a time. This will cost us almost nothing. I'm not going to say it's not going to cost a penny out of our budget. I can't 100% guarantee that. We might do some of the work to help do some of the clearing. But it's a no-cost, low-cost project for the town that can be beneficial to a lot of people. Another example is I had to repair some tennis courts at the high school, Guilford Lake School, and the basketball courts at the police station this spring. Fixed cracks, repainted, $46,000. Sorry, it's allergies. And really there's no blink of an eye because people use those facilities. So we can build something at almost no cost that can be used by a lot of people in the community. And just like we have tennis courts, why don't we have a place for people who want to play disc golf to play? We don't have it.
Quick question. One of the concerns raised at the last meeting where we approved the course on peddlers was, discs, errant discs flying around, and that was out in the middle of the woods and, adjacent to a road. This one's adjacent to a skate park, to soccer field. Are we putting people in harm's way? Because these aren't Frisbees. These are definitely not Frisbees.
Well, I can tell you it's nowhere near the skate park. I mean, I don't know if the scale is here, but it's probably at least 100 feet away, this one. The soccer field it's not even close. I mean, again, it's probably 100 feet away, so it's not close at all. And there's going to be quite a buffer of trees anyway. All those trees along the edges are all going to be there. I can never say that no one would ever get hit by one, hiking on the trails there, but we've been very careful, as I said earlier. None of them are crossing trails. But again, I've talked to 6, 7 people, my peers in other communities that have disc golf courses. They have trails weaving in and out through the fairways. They've never had an incident. The etiquette of disc golf is that pedestrians always have the right of way. So if somebody's about to throw and they see somebody on a trail nearby, they'll wait. I mean, that's the etiquette. It's just like in golf, you're not going to hit a ball if somebody's in the fairway. But what we've also told people, well, sometimes they occur, right? We also have told people that, it's our belief that people can still hike at the same time somebody might be playing disc golf. However, if they're concerned about it, the trout trail that goes along the river, we're nowhere near the trout trail, and that connects up with all the trails on the Baldwin side. So we're nowhere near any of those trails, so people can still safely hike there. If they're still concerned, we figured out something like 80 to 100 miles of hiking trails in Guilford. The town spent $12 million buying 600 acres East River Preserve. Beautiful place. I cross-country ski there every time I get a chance when there's snow. I'm up in there a lot. But I can't put a disc golf course or anything there. This is the only place we can build this. So we're not doing this, but if we had to close trails down, there's a lot of places people can hike in town. We're not closing the trails. People can still hike there.
Can I ask a question? And probably for George, but you're probably just as smart. So we went through 3 or 4 meetings on this not too long ago. We approved it. It got turned down apparently by the Board of Selectmen. So now we're back again. Wouldn't it make more sense for them before I have to hear everything again if they're to get their approval first and then we could look at it?
You don't need Board of Selectmen approval for this application. The last time, because it's under the jurisdiction of the Parks and Rec Commission because it's a park. It's in an existing park. The last time was...
So why don't we just do this from the beginning then?
And so this...
Instead of wasting all of our time.
At Peddlers?
Yeah.
So Peddlers was, I think at your request, was a public hearing because the Parks and Rec Commission did not hold a public hearing on that. And so they wanted an opportunity for the public to speak. The Parks and Rec Commission has held a public hearing, correct? So that's why, and it's not required. So that's why the applicant is, Parks and Rec, they're not requesting a public hearing.
So we're not modifying the parking
you.
lot, so it doesn't need first selectmen?
Correct, it
Or
doesn't
doesn't need
need Board of
selectmen's approval,
Selectmen, and
It goes to us.
I don't know, maybe trial and error?
A lot of time, a lot of time.
I got one question. Nearest residences on 77?
Well, the properties here, where they're building on Long Hill Road, the properties border Vineyard Park, but, I mean, the houses are way up, way up here. Some of those
The only
folks,
ones-
some of them did come to the public information meeting we had, and there's some that had questions. Like I said, those were neutral ones that weren't really against it. Some asked, well, how close is it going to be to our property? We told them, we're farther away than the trails. So again, here's a trail that's pretty close to their property. We're farther from that. They did, some of them did ask, well, could we put maybe some signs indicating it's private property beyond that point? We'd be happy to do that. I mean, maybe it's the property owner's responsibility, but we would do it just to make it happen.
Policy signs, be clear of property boundaries.
Yeah. But we're not, again, we're pretty far away. I'm not sure, but it's probably a good, close to 100 feet away from the boundary of some of these properties here.
And I'm just looking at it, driving up 77, those are the other ones that I could see that border off on the right side of the entranceway.
Yeah, well, we're not near them at all. Yeah.
Any commissioners have any additional questions? This is,
How's the parking for this?
Parking?
Ton of parking.
I can't tell how many spaces we have, but I mean, if there are, there's like a high school soccer game going on, a couple Little League games, that lot gets pretty filled up. It does. And then skate park, and we also have pickleball up there.
So you're going to have plenty of room for your...
I don't think there's any problem at all. So what we would do, if we schedule any tournaments, we'll make sure we schedule them where there's not Little League games, soccer games going on. I mean, we can manage that.
this is not a public hearing, right?
Did you want to speak to the recommendations of Don McKay?
Yeah, do we have to read that, this whole thing, in, before they
It's not
respond
a
to it?
public hearing.
No, it's not a public hearing, so I don't have to read it.
Just
But do
submit
you
it.
want to speak to all of her recommendations about
Sure, so I
protection
did
strategies
respond
for
to
turtles?
today, actually, I'd like to maybe have Chuck. Chuck is a herpetologist, and they strongly recommend we get a herpetologist involved. And so Chuck Anderselli, if you don't mind, I'd like to he can comment better. He had a conversation with Don McKay.
Anyone have any questions regarding the turtles?
Yeah, she gave like 1, 2, 3, 4, she gave like 15 different points, so.
Can you just give us the skinny?
Skinny, so that letter was sent out prior to knowing what went into this. I think the state saw it like a golf course going in, where you're bulldozing stuff, you're clearing it, you're planting grasses. The work that'll go on here is, like Rick mentioned, mainly done by hand. I just want to say, the box turtles in this area, Joel Helander is a great resource for this town. If you don't know him, he's been tracking turtles here for 40, 50 years. And he has great records. He could do a PhD on all the information that he has. He has all these turtles captured, released, where people reported them from. And in that area, I think he has 6 turtles. And I grew up in Madison, so I'm very familiar with the area. I know Baldwin is where most of those animals were seen. When you look at Bittner, it's not a place where you would go if you were interested in finding turtles. It's not a place that you would go thinking that you're going to find them. Box turtles use woodlands. They use riparian areas along rivers and streams. They like old-growth forests. They also like fields. Mostly what you're trying to protect usually with box turtles is the open areas, the place where the old-growth field or an old farm. They want the sun to hit the ground. They need to lay their eggs. The sun has to hit the ground there. When they use a wetland, in the middle of the summer when it gets hot and dry, they estivate. That means they're going to go into almost like a hibernation, like a summer dormant time. 'Cause it's so hot out, it's too hot for them. They'll go to these low-lying wetland areas and they'll burrow in and they'll kind of sit there for weeks or months without moving, without doing anything. This spot, you're basically, like Rick said, you're basically making a wider trail, but you're trying to leave the larger trees. So the canopy is going to remain closed. From the turtle standpoint, it'd almost be nice to clear cut a big area in the middle of this forest to let the sun hit the ground for them. That's not going to be done. The trees that are going to be taken down are just going to, most of the canopy will still be closed. And one big concern with the turtles is doing work in the winter, they hibernate. He's not going to be working in, we're not going to be working in any of the areas where they would be hibernating. They dig into the ground, usually around the wetland areas, and they just burrow into the soil. Staying the distance that the place would be from the wetland area, you're not worried about hitting any of these animals in the middle of the winter. And that's kind of why Dawn had recommended don't do the work in the winter. You want it done during the active season. So these animals are up walking around, and you can have someone go out there like myself and look for the animals. And once you don't see any, you put a silt fence around that work zone, and you work with inside that work zone without injuring any turtles with heavy equipment. So their idea, what was going to go on here, was much more invasive than.
So in looking at their recommendations,
Yes.
some of them seem a little over the top, but some of them seem pretty reasonable.
Yes.
Can you identify those that you feel really are not applicable and those that, because we really do rely on the DEP, so to just categorically waive what they say is not
Go through and
best practice.
step by step. All right. First page we're looking at, is that?
Yeah, hire a qualified
All right.
herpetologist?
That's me.
Okay.
All right. Especially cordials on this one. So I kind of covered the first two. I'll show you fencing. The fencing's really not necessary. I already spoke to the state. I spoke to Dawn personally regarding that.
That would be the third one?
That was the third one. She said, yes, once I explained what was going on there, she realized that it wasn't as invasive as they had envisioned. Yep, I'm taking care of that. Anyone working on the site as far as running equipment, if an ATV is used, I'll talk to that person, make sure they know what the turtles look like, what to look for, and I'll make sure that they deal with any volunteers as far as what to look for. Basically, don't step on any
No
turtle.
problem with that condition?
Yeah,
All
very-
construction
that's very
personnel
simple.
working with the turtles?
Yes. Areas where silt fence won't be used because it's not needed.
And turtle encounter will immediately be
Yes,
carefully
released
moved to
to
an
an
adjacent area, no problem.
No heavy machinery vehicles will be parked. No heavy equipment or machinery is used except for the possibility of an ATV, which we're waiting to hear back from the state, which should be
So
approved.
that's fine too, because we're not using it, so we can leave it,
Exactly.
okay?
So no skid steers, nothing to pull out any of that?
Nothing, and that's the nice part. That stuff's just going to be cut into appropriate sizes, left as large as possible, but cut into appropriate sizes and left in a pile. And that actually enhances habitat, because these things, when they're looking for places to either hibernate or if they're looking for places to estivate, get out of the hot sun, they can go in these piles. And that's for all animals. A problem that a lot of people do, they pull all this debris out of the forest and they bring it somewhere, they chip it. Leaving those things present actually gives a lot of wildlife habitat.
I think like Rick said, he's working with the environment, not against it. He's not going in with a bulldozer. He's going, instead of chopping trees down that are big,
Yeah,
he goes around them in a different direction
exactly.
and keeps everything in the natural environment it's in.
So is this, so for example, this area that's cleared out, which turned into that, is that correct?
No, so that's the area that's kind of next door to it, just to give you an idea of what it looked like. It was something like that. It's
you're
adjacent
saying
to that
no-
hole is what that looks like.
Right, but in none of this, if this has to be where that hole is, gets trucked out of there, it's all stockpiled and,
Dragged over, so
and,
we're not sure exactly how it's going to work as far
Yeah.
as this side or that side, but every hole will have a pile or more than one pile.
got it.
You want to kind of keep it nice and tidy, but it's there for a reason, so it will be seen.
Special precautions be taken to avoid degradation of wetland habitats, including wetland, fine?
We're not 54 spots and,
Contractor, this one seemed a little odd to me. Contractor or consulting herpetologist must search the work area each morning.
So a normal job, if you were doing a subdivision, I would go in before your guys get started on the bulldozers. I would walk into that area, I would check all the tracks to all the equipment, because when they use that stuff, it heats up. So during the day they're using it, they park it at night, some turtle comes along and it gets cold, it wedges itself into the tractor and stays warm.
So you're fine with that?
I will go and I will, yeah, that's not needed, there's no heavy equipment used.
But this doesn't talk about that, it just talks about searching the
Oh,
work
the work,
areas.
no, so that's really because of heavy equipment.
So, what are you?
So that's not needed every morning. No.
Okay. Everyone okay with that? All right, we're going to scratch that one. Felling trees adjacent to brooks and streams, please cut them to fall away from the waterway. No problem. Okay. Avoid any limit on equipment within 50 feet of streams and brooks.
Yes, no problem with that.
And confirm any sightings of turtles per that.
Yes, everything will be.
So the only one we're really scratching is exclusionary fencing and searching the work area every morning.
Oh, and also the dates, the time of year. There's not, to my knowledge, there's not going to be a limit on the months. Years ago, they used to have you do the work in the middle of the winter, so there wasn't a problem. People aren't running turtles over there walking around. But they realized that sometimes people would be digging in the area where they're actually hibernating. Right. So that would cause a problem. So that's what they did. Originally, they recommended doing this in the active season and just watch out for turtles moving. But since we're not really digging stuff up, digging them up during hibernation isn't a problem.
Okay.
When do they start to hibernate?
Usually October.
And so the work is being proposed to begin?
Tomorrow? No. The key time for any of my crew, the only time we can do anything, if we even can do anything, if we have time to do it, would be in the winter. We can't do it this time of year. Our guys are flat out. And that's why Chuck got that basically reversal of that requirement, because they hibernate near the sandy areas around the rivers. We're not doing anything near those areas. We're totally away from them. There's a follow-up letter that I have, that you folks have, that I sent today, so we're hoping to get a response back. Chuck and I talked about the letter I sent out. He had that same conversation with Dawn McKay. I basically put into writing the things that they talked about, for her to write back and say, yeah, okay, go ahead and do the things that we want to do there.
And by the way, we got a nice letter from Kevin that kind of...
That's exactly what I was about to mention too. That Kevin, at the bottom of his letter, says that several of the recommended strategies noted are not needed. And he has 4 items that he stipulated. Have you gotten a copy of Kevin's letter?
I got it today.
Okay. Seems more reasonable.
It seems more reasonable restrictions in terms of what to do with the turtle zone. Are you fine with what? Are you fine with what his okay? And I assume that those are included in
Those
the
are the
conditions.
conditions on the draft resolution
So when we do it.
as well, but I think the copy doesn't have a back, so use
Yeah,
this
this will be the one that we.
original when you're making a motion.
Want to read them in?
You want to do the motion first?
We can just read them in and say
Okay.
for Frank.
So,
For Kevin, for Frank.
this whole thing?
No, just the
where it
conditions.
starts by saying-
Oh, all right. So it would be 1, this is from Bittner Park recommendation, okay. In order to protect the natural resources of Bittner Park, I recommend the following conditions of approval. 1, the herpetologist appraise the workers on the turtles' presence, provide them with fact sheets regarding 2 types of turtles, and teach them how to survey the area for the turtles and how to handle the turtles if found in the work area. 2, prior to initiating work activities each day, the area be surveyed for the presence of the turtles. If any turtles are found, that they get relocated outside the work area. 3, when the equipment is being driven along the trails and work area, spotter shall walk ahead of the equipment to observe the presence of the turtles. And 4, any turtles found on the property should be documented and reported to the Connecticut DEEP Natural Diversity Database.
Frank? Well, this isn't a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak or have clarifying questions, I'm all about getting as much information on this as we can. Anyone have anything, any comments, questions? Okay?
If we approve this, you're starting work like ASAP?
Yeah, we're going to check. We just talked to Ed earlier. We'd like to hear back from Dawn McKay with the response we gave to her. So, I mean, I'm exaggerating. We want to start tomorrow, but we'd like to start soon because it's something we've been working 2 years on this.
We're hoping for a reply from the state, from Dawn within the next week.
Well, why don't I read in the resolution, and then we can discuss it. Be it voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approves the construction of an 18-hole disc golf course as proposed by the Town of Guilford Park and Recreations Department for Bittner Park, Durham Road, map 97, lot 10, as shown on map entitled Compilation Plan Property of the Town of Guilford, Long Hill Road and Durham Road, Guilford, Connecticut, prepared by Waldo and Woodworth, P.C., dated May 11, 2000, and hand revised August 30, 2018, to show location of disc golf course. Be it further voted that the herpetologist appraise the workers on the turtles' presence, provide them with the fact sheets regarding the 2 types of turtles, teach them on how to survey the area for turtles and how to handle turtles if found in the work area. Further, it be voted that prior to initiating work activities each day, the area be surveyed for the presence of turtles. If turtles are found, they get relocated outside of the work area. Be it further voted, when equipment is being driven alongside the trails in the work area, a spotter shall walk ahead of the equipment to observe the presence of turtles. Be it further voted, any turtles found on the property should be documented and reported to the Connecticut DEEP Natural Diversity Database.
One additional,
Oh,
on the
if you would
main-
help me?
Yep, it
Good.
says, be it further voted that this application is approved based on the finding that it conforms to all applicable sections of the zoning code of the town of Guilford.
That is the motion.
Second.
Okay, discussion? I mean, I think it's about as uninvasive a use as you can have, and if 5 years from now, people say, it was a good idea to try, but it's pretty easy to undo. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, it's,
It is, yeah, you're right, it could, it's not a big deal, if that were to happen.
I think he's done all he can to keep everything up the way it is natural already, and he's not cutting anything down that is any substantial size. He's going around anything that is. He's doing everything he can to keep the environment the way it is, so that the people will be out on that course who feel like they're actually out in the woods and they're going to enjoy themselves. And I think it's a great thing. And it's not going to cost the town a lot of money. Maybe during the season, you might have to go out and cut a little bush or shrub or something that's coming up, but it's minimal compared to what we're spending on all this other stuff. So this is really a great thing. And like I said before, anything that can get the kids out, I'm for it. I think it's the 100% thing to shoot for.
Frank likes it.
I like it. There's no opposition this time.
I like the fact that you're not going to have cars running parallel to it as well, which is, that the safety concern was my biggest one in the last one, so.
Plus, you totally eliminate the parking needs. As you mentioned, that the only thing might be some tournament soccer, like Soccer Fest, if they're using that, or Little League games at the same time as soccer games going on. There's ample parking in that facility as stands right now.
We good? Call the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Application to be received, site plan, we receive and take action for Three Girls Vegan, 645 Boston Post Road, map 48, lot 11, zone TS. Thank you for your patience. Site plan revision to change use from retail to restaurant / retail, receive and take action. Tell us about the Three Girls Vegan. What are we doing?
Yeah, so we are now located at 350 Stepstone Hill Road, and we're going to move to 645 Boston Post Road.
Could you just state your name?
Sure, I'm sorry, Tracy Alexander, and my address? 16 Jefferson Park Road, Madison, Connecticut. So that's the idea, is we'd like to move from one location to Boston Post Road.
And just a change of use from restaurant.
Yeah, so I guess it was zoned for retail.
Previously Peppers Retail.
So it's, you know where Fest Labs is? Yeah. So it's right adjacent to McDonald's, it's in that plaza.
Snacks and all.
We used to have Boston Pizza in there, which we made a tumble place, I think.
Yeah,
No, if
yeah, there's a tumble place right next door.
If they're vegan,
Taekwondo.
And snaps.
Yeah,
if they're vegan, they'll find you.
that's right. Well, it's funny because McDonald's has to approve who goes in our building.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they would not approve any food. The landlord told us they wouldn't approve bagel places, and they turned everybody down, but they didn't consider us food. So that was pretty exciting. So I thought that was wonderful.
Before they realized you are.
Is that really mutual with them?
Yeah, I guess.
All right, well, the good news is, on September 18th, Dennis Johnson wrote a letter saying that the applicant's proposed site plan revision to change the use from retail to restaurant retail is compatible with the septic system design capacity currently existing on the site. It's recommended that the applicant's proposed change in use be permitted. So Dennis is behind you. That's the only letter.
Thanks a lot.
Got a motion
Well,
anywhere?
you're motion, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, please do.
Be it voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approves a site plan modification for Three Girls Vegan as shown on a plan entitled Three Girls Vegan Creamery, 645 Boston Post Road, Guilford, Connecticut, 06437. Be it further voted that the requirement for a professionally prepared site plan is waived based on adequate parking requirements. Be it further voted that this application is approved based on the finding that it conforms to all applicable sections of the zoning code of the town of Guilford. Be it further voted that this modification of site plan shall be effective on September 28th, 2018.
Very good. Discussion?
No, it's the same as what you're doing.
It's exactly the same. The difference is they're going to allow us to have a few tables. Right now, where we are, it's just takeout. So they're allowing us up to 4 tables. So we're going to do that. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Any questions? I think it's pretty straightforward. Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Let's see. I have had a chance to read the minutes, and they look substantially correct. I would make a motion to approve them.
Second.
All in favor?
Abstain.
With no further business, we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, so much for your 820.
I know.
Blew that one. Good job.
It wasn't my fault, man. It was not my fault.